Organizations are investing heavily in technology, transformation, and culture change. But beneath all of that is a more fundamental question. Are our leaders equipped to create the kind of employee experience that actually drives performance in this new era? Future readiness shows up in the day-to-day experience people have with their leaders. Today, we're joined by Jacob Morgan, author of The 8 New Laws of Employee Experience, to talk about what that really means and what organizations may be getting wrong as they try to prepare leaders for what's ahead. Jacob, welcome to the Blanchard LeaderChat podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you as well. Your book is very focused on the employee experience. So many questions about what the future of leadership even looks like. So let's just dive in right there. What do you think the most important mindset that leaders must, or mindset shift rather, that leaders must make right now with all the changes?
Oh man, there's a few. Um, I think one of the most important ones that doesn't get talked about, and I suppose you could bucket as a skill or a mindset, but you have to know how to pull out the human from the human. And that's both a mindset and I think it's a skill. And so what I mean by that is that in a world where every organization is so quick to give their workforce AI tools, what starts to happen, and I talk about this in the book, is one of the potential futures that might arise, and it's called the algorithmic enterprise. And in the algorithmic enterprise, everyone around you seems a little bit smarter. The emails seem a little bit more polished. The strategy documents seem better. Everything seems a little bit better. But what's really happening is that people are just becoming the physical manifestations of whatever AI tools they're using. And so I like to give the scenario kind of a fun example. Imagine you're going into a meeting and you're at a company and you want to make the argument for why your company should go in strategic direction A. And you go into whatever AI tool you're using, you upload all the documents, the information, and you say, make me a bulletproof argument that I can present to my executive team for why we have to go in direction A. And now there's somebody else on your team. They believe in direction B. They do the same thing. They put all the documents, all the information into their AI tool, and they say, make me a bulletproof argument for why we have to go in direction B. And so now what's happening is you're in a meeting, you're presenting everything that your AI told you, your coworker is presenting everything that his AI told him. And there's no more original thinking or thought or judgment or discernment, nothing. You're just physical bots. And so for a leader, it's going to be very important for you to understand that if your employees, your team members are using AI tools, how do you pull the human from the human? So what I mean by that is you have to get into this mindset of understanding that your employees are not just working in isolation anymore. They all have their AI coworkers with them. And so when they give you work, when they put together whatever deliverables there are, you have to assume that they're getting some sort of AI assistance and you have to challenge them. So learn to ask them questions like, hey, did you use AI to do XYZ? Yes, I did. What prompt did you put into the AI to get it to say this? What information did you give it? Do you think the AI made a mistake? Did you agree with everything that the AI told you? Why or why not? What did you think maybe that it overlooked? And so you have to learn to pull the critical thinking, the discernment of people out of the work that they're doing. Otherwise, I think we're going to get into a lot of problems going forward. So that to me right now is one of the most important mindsets and skills for future leaders. And nobody is talking about that at all. And it kind of freaks me out, to be honest. So I think that is really, really crucial.
Why do you think traditional high performance isn't enough anymore? If you were plotting out somebody's career and where they can thrive, it seems to be they've got to have much more than just the performance. They've got to bring a more well-rounded approach. Why do you think that is?
Well, performance in general, it's becoming very interesting to even define high performance. And again, this is where AI comes in. because now, what does high performance mean? If you look at, for example, a lot of organizations like Accenture and Meta that are mandating the use of AI, they're trying to turn everybody into a high performer. Mandating the use of these tools, and employees are trying to wonder, am I going to be evaluated in a different way? So if I'm using AI and now I'm able to create more work, better work, I'm writing code faster, I'm creating marketing documents faster, does my performance change in any way? Does my compensation structure change in any way? Am I viewed more as a high performer because I'm doing more, or is this just kind of becoming the new expected baseline standard? So I think the first thing for a lot of organizations is to change and to try to understand what actually makes a high performer inside your organization. And I guess it depends on the organization that you're part of. And it also, I think, speaks to how quickly things are changing. Because in a rapidly changing world, just focusing purely on your performance in the current state doesn't mean that you're going to be a high performer in the future state. And so there is a lot of talk in paying attention to reskilling and upskilling and being adaptable and being agile, because these organizations realize how quickly things are changing, right? It's sort of when you look in the rearview mirror, what does it say? Objects in mirror are not as close as they appear, or closer than they appear. And so high performance today does not necessarily mean high performance tomorrow. And I think for a lot of employees out there, they're being challenged and pushed to, I don't know, in a sense, have a better, have more clarity around what the future of their role and their function and their performance is going to look like. And again, AI is playing a big role in this, because think about how easily and how quickly you can reskill and upskill and change the way that you work. In fact, organizations are having such a hard time with this that you think about AI training. We're getting new AI models and features faster than the companies are able to train their employees on these new AI tools and features. So that whole space, I think, is going to have to be rethought quite a bit.
So AI, every time we open the news, every time we have internal meetings, no matter where you work out, the acceleration of AI continues. It's never going to stop. In your opinion, with your research, why and how do human-centric capabilities, why does that matter more now than ever? Humans are still going to have a place, correct?
I'm an optimist. I've covered a lot of the research around AI on my Substack and my daily podcast as well. I don't subscribe to the doom and gloom narrative. None of it. I think a lot of the people who promote it have a vested interest in promoting the doom and gloom narrative. Maybe they're the AI companies, maybe they're research firms. I'm very optimistic. I mean, cautiously slow, but I'm optimistic. Somebody has to give AI the rules, the guardrails, the right information that it needs to get access to. In other words, you have to, like, when you buy a house, you don't just go into an empty room and you start sleeping there. You have to set it up so that it looks like a bedroom or it looks like an office. If you go into an empty house, oftentimes you can't really tell what's a bedroom, what's an office, what's just a room. Like, it needs to be furnished the right way. And so what a lot of people are going to have to do going forward now is, before AI walks into the house, you're going to have to be the interior designer and teach AI, hey, this is the living room. Here's what we do in the living room. There's the TV. Here's how you operate it. Here's how we're going to design and decorate the living room so that you can live there. And being able to do that requires a lot of communication, requires a lot of collaboration, being able to get clearly ideas, complex ideas across. So to me, there is tremendous opportunity for a lot of new roles that are going to emerge to guide AI, to give it the information and the context it needs, and to be able to point it at the right problem. And that's going to be a very unique human skill and ability. And again, we talked about leadership. That, again, very unique human skill and ability. So I'm an optimist. I think a lot of new roles are going to emerge. And I think that the human qualities of empathy, communication, collaboration, judgment, discernment, being able to lead through uncertainty, trying to figure out what does the AI get wrong or right? What should AI do? What should a person do? All of these things are going to be critical skills and they are uniquely and distinctly human. But we do need to train for them and make investments in them.
Leadership readiness is so vital to organizations. Where do you think organizations most often misjudge their own leadership readiness?
Well, there have been so many studies that have come out which have shown that most organizations don't even have a good leadership bench. And for people not familiar with that, that means if your leaders today retired or they disappeared, like in the Avengers when Thanos snaps his fingers and kind of, some of the good guys disappear, that most HR people don't believe that they have enough current ready leaders to be able to take those roles. And so I think there are a few interesting things here. And it's also important to remember the impact that AI is going to have on this. Because if you look at what so many companies are doing now, which makes this even worse, is they're coming out and they're saying, well, instead of hiring entry level employees, we're going to use AI to fill that gap, which might sound like a good idea now. But if you think you have a leadership gap today, wait till you see what that gap is going to look like in 3, 4, 5 years. And so what companies are inadvertently doing by chasing the short-term goals and profits is they're killing their leadership pipeline and their executive pipeline. And so a lot of organizations, I think, as far as leadership preparedness, they're too focused on the short term. They're not thinking long term. I think another area that is a big mistake, we tend to only assume that a very few select people deserve leadership training. In other words, you have to earn leadership training. If you start working for a company, we're not going to train you to become a leader. You got to be here for 3, 4, 5 years. And even in doing research for my book, The Future Leader, I found that most people get put in a leadership role at some point in their 20s, right? You're a supervisor, maybe you're working in a retail store, but most people don't actually get leadership training until their mid to late 30s or early 40s. So there's a period of 10 to 20 years where you are in a position of leadership where you were never actually taught how to lead. And so what do you do in that situation? You kind of make things up and you do what other people around you are doing. So if you have a bad culture, guess what? You're going to be a bad leader. So I think everybody should get leadership training, not just kind of the very few that quote unquote earned it. So there are a lot of challenges that I think these organizations have, especially now, as I mentioned, when you throw in the AI element in there. So everybody should be getting access to leadership training. You should not be killing the front of your leadership pipeline, and you should be rethinking how leadership training gets done. Right? I'm a big fan of things like apprenticeship programs, having people work side by side with you. If you're in the L&D space, you're definitely having to rethink how you're educating, how you're upskilling and retraining your employees in the world of AI. So that whole area is going through a massive, massive transformation.
A big part of people being able to thrive in an organization that helps really drive their motivation is around stability and psychological safety. And that can just be from just the day-to-day how they're feeling. It may not come down from leadership, but how can leaders help create more stability and create more psychological safety with all the change that's happening at a pace that we've never seen before?
Yeah, the stability piece is a difficult one. I think stability is the wrong thing to be focusing on. I think if you're promising your employees stability, you're just lying to them. I think instead of focusing on stability, leaders need to focus more on adaptability and to tell your employees, look, the role that you're doing, I don't know how long that role is going to be around. I don't know if AI is going to impact that role. I can't promise you that role is going to be here in 3, 4, 5 years. But here's what I can tell you. If you are able to learn how to use these new tools and technologies that we're using, if you have an open mind, if you're curious, if you're willing to learn new things, and you're willing to move from one function to another function or from one role to another role, you'll have a place at this company. But if you're wedded to the single function and the role that you're doing now, and you think that that's what you're going to be doing forever, I'm just going to be honest with you right now and tell you that that's likely not going to be a long-term solution for you. But again, if you can be adaptable and nimble and agile, you're going to be able to move around. Um, one of these examples came out. It was Amazon, and I think it was over the past few months. I believe it was they let go of 30,000 of their employees, and the big headline was, "Oh my God, Amazon's letting go of 30,000 of their employees." But then if you read the blog post that their chief human resource officer actually said, she said employees inside of Amazon have 90 days to find a new role in the company. And if you're able to find a new role yourself in the company, you stay. And I think that is going to be a model going forward. So if you have, you have to think of your company as an internal talent marketplace where you're going to move around, maybe from different projects to different teams to different functions to different tasks. And if you have AI as your coworker and as your co-pilot to kind of help guide you and mentor you and help you learn new things, then you should be able to thrive inside of an organization for many years. But if you put yourself in one area and in one box and assume that you're going to be able to stay there, you're going to be in trouble. So leaders need to change the way that they're communicating and messaging what stability actually means. And in my book, I call this the law of grow or go. And it basically means that learning is a new form of job security. If employees like working for you, they like the leaders, they like the compensation, the company, the people, and if they have opportunities to move around, why would they leave? There's no reason for them to leave. So if you can create those marketplaces, those education and training programs, the upskilling and reskilling pathways, if you can build all those things in, you'll be fine. But if you assume kind of the old static way of hiring and learning and training and development, I think you as a company are going to be in trouble. And as an employee, if you have that mindset, you too are going to be in trouble. So reframing how we talk about that, I think, is going to be a really important element.
What did your research share about the balance between the day-to-day employee experience and how leaders share their long-term vision? How are you able to do that? And how can you do that in a way that enhances the employee experience?
Well, unfortunately, I think most employees don't know the long-term vision. So, fixing that alone is, I think, a big problem. But if you think about most of an employee's day-to-day experience, and in the book, I have what I call a great day, a week, a month, a quarter, and a year. And I won't go through each and every one of them. But if you think about it, a leader is central to each and every one of those. I mean, you interact with your leader every day. You want recognition from your leader, either probably each week. Projects that your leader will probably assign to you on a monthly basis, the quarterly reviews and meetings that you have with your leader, ideally the promotion that you'll get, hopefully in a year or so with your leader. So a leader has a tremendous impact on the overall experience that you have at your company. They can either make your life at work great, or they can make your life at work hell. And I've been in both of those situations, and I'm sure most people listening to this have been in those situations as well. And I think a lot of leaders forget that the impact that you have on the experience of an employee doesn't just stay with them at work, but it goes home with them at the end of each day as well. So if you as a leader, you treat your employees well, you recognize them for the work that they do, when they go home at the end of each day, they're going to be in a good mood. They're going to treat their kids and their spouse better. They'll have a little bit of a pep in their step. They're just going to be in a better mood and in a better place. But the flip side of that is also true. If you berate them, if you take credit for their work, if you don't recognize them for the hard work that they're putting in, if you talk to them like they're cogs, they're going to go home at the end of each day and they're going to be in a bad mood. And it's going to come out in how they engage with their kids and with their spouse and with their friends. So leaders need to remember that you have a profound impact on the experience of your employees, not just at work, but also at home as well. And so you have the most pivotal role in the experience of your employees, not HR, not IT or anybody else, but it's you as the leader. And I think more leaders need to remember and understand that.
If you were, taking over an organization, or if you were magically putting yourself into a place where they needed to kind of from scratch start over, What would you do if an organization, if you were helping lead an organization and you wanted them to become future ready leaders? What would you do?
Well, probably the very first thing I would do, and what I've seen a lot of companies do, is they go on their listening tours. So I would go try to understand, what does leadership mean inside my company? What does great leadership look like? What does leadership look like that hinders employees? Where are the roadblocks? Where are the obstacles? Who are the leaders inside the company that everyone admires and respects and loves, and why? And who are the leaders in the company that people don't want to work for and with, and why? So that's probably the first place that I would start. And then I would redesign kind of the programs that we have into place. I would create the right incentive programs. I would introduce apprenticeship models. I would have the great leaders that we have at our company be the evangelists and the champions. I would have a part of their job, a significant part of their job, be to mentor and coach other leaders. I would probably get rid of whatever internal, course system or subscription that they have. And I would focus more even on kind of the in-person stuff. I know that sounds crazy, right? In-person leadership training, go figure. But I would bring back some of those elements. And I think companies have just gotten way off track.
If you look at some of the best organizations out there that create a really strong employee experience, the ones that have the cultures that people could recite. They're not just on the wall that they see if they happen to go by the front office. They actually know the culture, they live the culture. How do you feel like these new laws can be best built into culture, and rather than rolling them out and making the people feel like, well, we've got to check these boxes? Like, how do you make people live and breathe
Well, I
this?
think they need to be a part of your rituals. They need to be a part of the day to day. So when you just have values that are hanging on the wall, those things become meaningless, but they need to be a part of your day to day. They need to become a part of how employees work. They need to be a part of what employees see, what they hear, whether it's in the meetings, whether it's in the discussions, whether it's in the customer stories, whether it's in the branding, the messaging. It needs to be everywhere. And I think that's probably one of the most effective things that you can do. So if you have, I don't know, if one of your values is something like, innovate or try new things or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that's a great value to have, but how does that actually come to life? How do employees see and experience innovation and trying new things? Are they allowed to challenge leaders? Are they allowed to speak up during meetings and suggest new ways of doing something? Are they allowed to spend some of their time at work trying to come up with a new product, a new service, a new idea, a new way to get something done? Does that actually, can you see it? And so if you can't see these things inside your company, then the values that you have are meaningless. So I think that's one of the most important things for organizations to realize is, how do we physically make our values, our principles, whatever it might be, come to life? How do you see it, feel it, experience it? That's what the best companies have figured out.
Time for just a couple more questions before we wrap up. If a leader that's listening to our podcast and they want to begin closing their readiness gap right away, what's one concrete step they can take?
So have a conversation with your people. One of the things that I found that was rather fascinating, when I wrote the book, The Future Leader, I looked at the top mindsets and skills that 140 CEOs said were most crucial for current and aspiring leaders. And I then surveyed 14,000 employees and I asked these employees, how well do you think your leaders are practicing these skills and mindsets? And by and large, a lot of the leaders themselves and the top executives, they said, yeah, we're doing a pretty good job. But then the employees who worked for these leaders said, our leaders are doing a terrible job. So there was a huge disconnect between how well leaders think they are doing versus how well people who work for these leaders think they're actually doing. And so if you want to close that gap, one of the things that you should do is to have a discussion with your employees and to be very candid with them and say, hey, look, I'm kind of going through a little bit of an internal assessment here. And I'm trying to figure out the things that I need to work on and the things that I'm good at. Here's what I think I'm good at, and here's what I think I need to work on. What do you think? And get feedback from their employees and see if there's alignment. And sometimes I do this with executives during workshops. I have executives pair up with another executive, and I say, write down all the things that motivate you, that excite you, that energize you, and all the things that you hate, and all the things that uh, take away energy from you, and the things that you're not good at. And then I have them pair up with another executive and say, now write this about the other person. And you always just hear people cracking up in the room because the things that they think they're good at, other people don't point out. And the things that they're bad at, other people oftentimes think they're good at. So when you live only in your world, you really miss out on a lot of things. And so building that level of self-awareness, both internal and external self-awareness, makes a big difference. And I think the simplest thing that you can do is just be candid and honest with your employees and ask them to rate you on some skills and things that you think you need to work on.
What's one thing you hope our listeners take away from today's conversation?
Oh my goodness, one thing. Um, Probably, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about this much, but that nobody's going to look out for you but you. You want to be a great leader, go be a good leader. You want to upskill in the company, make an effort. Talk to other employees, talk to leaders. Don't wait for your company to teach you anything and everything you need to know to be successful because oftentimes they themselves don't know what you need. So take a more proactive role over your personal and your professional development and don't assume that people are going to do anything for you.
The book is called The 8 New Laws of Leadership Experience. Jacob Morgan, if people wanted to dig a little bit deeper into you, where would you send them?
So a couple of things. One, the book, the URL is the number 8exlaws.com. That's 8exlaws.com. I have a popular newsletter on the future of work, which is futureofworknewsletter.com. And then my email, if people want to reach out, is jacob@thefutureorganization.com, which means my website, my homepage is thefutureorganization.com.
Jacob, thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Blanchard LeaderChat podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you enjoyed the interview, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and please share it with your friends. The best way you can help us grow is feedback. So write a review if you haven't already. This podcast is brought to you by Blanchard, the heart of human achievement. Visit Blanchard.com for additional resources to help you and your organization succeed.